What up, and greetings. Welcome to another Hearthstone card review. So since last time, we had some hints that the expansion might be coming out on the 26th of April, because there has been a warning message on the Naxxramas expansion that has said that it will be taken off the shop on the 26th of April, so a lot of people have connected this to the release date being on the same time. But since then, Blizzard has changed it back to May, and it has not been confirmed, and I doubt that it would be coming this early, but we might get surprised. And that being said, let's get into reviewing the cards that we have for now. First on our list today is a card that Firebat got to reveal to us. It's called Vilefin Inquisitor, and it's a Murloc for 1 mana, 1 free Paladin. Specific Murloc, so it seems like Blizzard is really making a push to apply Murlocs to both Shaman and Paladins lately. This is very much resemblant to Sir Murgleton, in that it's a 1 mana, 1 free. But this one, instead of letting you choose from free hero powers that you discover, instead, it changes your hero power from summoning a 1/1 guy to summoning a 1/1 Murloc. And while I wasn't ever a big fan of Murlocs, because I don't think that the aesthetic of being very, very cute is too appealing, at least to myself, I'm a bigger fan of trolls, for instance. I'm very glad that this is not a buff to anything can happen decks, because I fucking love those decks when you just sit there and feel hopeless and like you cannot do anything. You get me? Yes, this I can see being played in a more mid-range type of deck with Murloc Knights and with War Leaders that they can then use when the board is already saturated with Murlocs. And you can use the War Leader as a finisher or to deal with stuff on board that they couldn't otherwise deal with. The way that it works right now is that you're trying to deal with every single Murloc on board, because if they buff each other, that's really bad for you. If they put down a Murloc Knight, you kill that Murloc Knight whenever you have the chance, because if a Murloc Knight summons a Murloc Knight, then there's just Murloc Knights everywhere suddenly, and you just lost it. This card might prevent that from happening because it summons an extra Murloc every turn, which means that at certain points in your game you might have like 3 or 4 of these Murlocs on board, and those become really, really dangerous with a War Leader because they can buff them for like 12, 15 extra damage, then use as a finisher, or to deal with the board in a way that you couldn't have otherwise with just guys, and Quartermaster is going out. So this is a buff to guys becoming Murlocs, I guess. We have to wait and see if this gets played. Definitely cool card. Firebat got one of the cooler ones. Vilefin Inquisitor. As a second card, we get a minion for Shaman, and oh boy, our Shaman's getting some love this expansion. It's a 4/5 for 4 mana, Master of Evolution. As Battle Cry, it transforms a friendly minion into a random one that costs 1 more. So like a Recombobulator, but it raises the mana cost of the minion by 1, which is kind of a good deal, considering that it's a 4/5 Yeti stats sort of minion, and it doesn't really lose anything on the stats. Recombobulating a friendly minion into a higher cost one, especially from a damaged minion or a minion that's almost about to die, is a very, very good deal. This is really amazing in Shaman, of course, because you can transform, recombobulate, evolve, however you want this effect to be called, your totem. So if you summon something like a healing totem on a turn when you've got nothing else on board, you can always Master of Evolution it, and you can add 1 mana to its cost, meaning that it can turn into a Millhouse Mana Storm or a Totem Golem and give you crazy amounts of stats for the value of this card. Or it can turn into a Doomsayer and fuck you over. So it depends on how much this will be of a reliable effect. The cool thing is that it's somewhat similar to Unstable Portal in that it, instead of discounting that minion, like Unstable Portal does for 2 mana, this one adds 1 to the existing price of the card. At the same time, you can transform a minion that has already found its use. It has used its Divine Shield, it has used its Battle Cry effect, it has found its use, it's been damaged, and then you can transform it into a different minion and make it potentially stronger. Sometimes stronger minions don't necessarily have stronger stats. That's why sometimes it's not the smartest idea to recombobulate something like a Damaged Dustingo or Ancient Brewmaster, because it might turn into a Keeper of the Grove or a Gnomish Inventor, and then you hate life. But turning it into 1 extra cost minion for not really paying anything in stats could be really good. It works with Bran, transforming it twice into a 2 extra cost minion. which is a cool combo. Control Shaman is being pushed by Blizzard out there for it to be viable, and I have like the biggest hopes for that to happen because I really, really want to play it. And I overall really hope that this card surprises us in the best possible way. Next one on the list is another minion for Shamans again. Shamans got 3 cards revealed so far. They all seem pretty solid, including this one. It's called Think From Below. For 6 mana you get a 5/5. That's terrible stat line. But it costs 1 less for each totem that you summon this game, plus it's got a taunt. So you can use it as a defensive tool when you're summoning your totems and things don't quite work out the way that you wanted them to. You can place this on the board to stop the flow. It is not a totem itself, obviously, because it's some tentacled monster, and I can't really see what it is, to be honest. But if you're playing a totem-specific deck that Blizzard has been pushing with TGT, but it didn't quite work out the way that they imagined it to, and Shaman has gone in a far more aggressive route than totems are ever gonna be, because, you know, hero power is generally quite slow. Totems are generally without attack, and you have to play other minions in order to buff them with attack. Those minions are kind of slow, so the whole game kind of gets drawn out. In that time, Aggro Shaman just completely obliterates you already. And this is one of the tools that Blizzard is giving exclusively to Shamans, unfortunately, but Shaman's hero power is the most unreliable from the entire game because it's a 25% chance on 4 different things. And this might push the archetype of helping the hero power becoming the prominent strength of Shaman to come to light. If it's gonna be enough, that's very hard to say, because even Aggro Shaman deals with a 5/5 taunt. You know, it has problem dealing with something like a Divine Shield and a high health taunt, because it only has 1 Earthshock and it doesn't run any hexes. But with the 5/5 taunt, it can usually deal with something like a Knife Juggler with an Abusive Sergeant. It's 2 mana plus a Battlecry effect that kills your 4 mana taunt. Was that really worth it? Preventing 5 damage? Not greatly. I think it could have been a 5/6 that would have been borderline OP. But as of now, it's a very balanced card. It's not a bad card. As I said, I think it's a solid card. It's great if you get it for 0 mana later on in the game. But if you get there, then you have already pretty much won against aggro because you have survived until that point against aggro. It's something like getting a Frost Giant for like 2 mana. You know, when you play for 2 mana, it's really great because you can do so much more on your turn, but then you usually don't have so much more in your hand anymore because it's like turn 15, 16 or something along those lines. So Think From Below, I am not entirely sure if it's gonna be included in all Shaman decks. It's fair enough having an early game taunt, but having an early game taunt that is only 5 health doesn't survive through much, and I don't think that the 5 attack on a taunt matters so much. I'm not sure about this card being played even in totem specific decks. I might be wrong, but I think Master of Evolution that we've seen just before this has more chance of being played in the standards. But that's just my opinion. Isn't this one of the creatures from Zangamesh that was always underwater and walking around? Or maybe his brother? Brother from another mother. Next one is a new minion for warriors. It's a 3 mana 3/3 called Ravaging Ghoul. And as Battlecry, it deals 1 damage to all other minions. So you can imagine it as a whirlwind on a stick. It is kind of amazing that we are getting this effect as a Battlecry rather than a Death Rattle. That is something like a Death Spite or Ends of Tentacle that we've seen coming out earlier. You are losing that 1 mana advantage that Whirlwind has. Then again, Whirlwind was mainly played because it was discounted by Thaurissan into costing 0, but now Thaurissan isn't played in the new version of Patron. You're still playing 2 Whirlwinds because it's such a great card inside this deck. And it has the benefit of costing 1 mana and being able to play a lot of different cards on the same turn that you play Whirlwind, and to combo it with your patrons, you know. Playing this with a patron is not that great because you're already paying 8 mana to play just this and a patron. And then what else do you do on that turn? But if you get this in side hand, it does a lot more than a Whirlwind will do. It comes into play and it deals 1 damage to all other minions, meaning that it punishes aggro like completely when it comes into play. And if the opponent just plays like a Lepernome and then a Lepernome Abusive Sergeant, this comes into play and destroys the whole lot, which is really, really amazing. I think this card is really solid. It's a common card, so it'll come a lot of times in Arena, so Warrior is getting some buffs in Arena again. Yeah, I think it's either Unstable Ghoul that has been transformed, or maybe a Flesh-Eating Ghoul. But since it deals 1 damage, it makes more sense that it's an Unstable Ghoul and that it came to the class that it actually was meant to belong in the first place, because it's the only class that is actually playing him. And instead of, exploding when he dies, he learned how to explode when he arrives. Next card that we have today is called Meyer Keeper. It's a 4-mana minion for Druid. Free, terrible stats, but the effect is just completely nuts. You can choose one, as a Druid can usually choose one or the other effect. It either summons a 2/2 slime, so you get a 5/5 in 2 parts, or you gain an empty mana crystal. So this is like a Wild Growth on a stick. And having Wild Growth on a stick is quite incredible. We had a similar thing in Darnassus Aspirant. The problem with Darnassus Aspirant is that people realize that you want to really keep the mana crystal that you're ahead for the rest of the game. Where Darnassus Aspirant is put in play, he just becomes a must-kill target in order to slow the opponent down and affect its next plays. And Aggro Druid could deal with it because it had 1 turn and 2 turn plays, which then he could still play instead of playing something like a Shredder. Sometimes, not all the times, but sometimes. So that Darnassus Aspirant started disappearing from mid-range and Ramp Druid and only really stayed in the Aggro Druid. This one, because it allows you to keep the mana crystal without really paying that much on the stats, is really amazing. Yes, Wild Growth is good because if you draw it in late game, then you can draw a card through it and cycle it. This one is kind of good in the late game, that you can choose the other option and play a 2/2 slime. Not incredible, but it's definitely better than Darnassus Aspirant that you draw in the late game and it's just a dead card. A 2/3 that is just does nothing. This does something, and if you play it on curve, if you play it, on turn 3, if you played Wild Growth, then you played this on turn 3. On turn 4, you're on 6 mana, and then you can double innervate an Old God, which is, it's just, I think Old Gods will belong primarily in Druid, or at least some of them, because of the ability to ramp up, which is going to be unmatched by some other classes, which don't speed up this amount. And yeah, I think this is actually a stronger card than Klaxi Amber Weaver, even though I think that card is quite good. With Cthulhu, this might be played in the same deck with Cthulhu because this can help him out get out quicker. It is a great card. I'm actually kind of scared of this card because I think it might be the strongest ones. I might be wrong on this. Again, I might be wrong on everything that I say here. But Meyer Keeper gives me the creeps. Last card of today is another one for Shamans. I should really keep this one for another review because half of this review is just Shaman cards. Shaman-headed cards raining this time. But I think this is another solid card for Shamans. It's a 5-mana 4/2 weapon, so it's none of that 5-mana 2/2 bullshit that Warrior got. Because this one can actually help kill stuff on the turn when it comes into play, or at least help kill stuff. Whereas a 2/2 Tentacle for Arms, what you're gonna do with that? Allow it to return to your hand when you use it twice, or... Nah, just kidding. But summoning a 4/2 Elemental, I suppose that it's a vanilla 4/2 Elemental, just slightly worse than Ice Rager. But paying 1 mana for Ice Rager is very different to paying 3 mana for Ice Rager. It is pricier than a True Silver Champion or a Dev Spite, but that's because the effect is so much better than a True Silver Champion's. And that's what I mean, paying 1 mana for a 4/2, despite the fact that it's on Death Rattle and you have to swing with it for 2 turns in order for it to happen, and then you have to wait another turn before the 4/2 can attack. So it's a free turn setup. Is still a really good deal. For 1 mana, getting a 4/2 in play is good, and 4/2 weapons are generally very, very good in dealing with stuff, or they have been in the past. Shaman has some amazing weapons because, except for Charge Hammer, all of the other weapons have seen play at a certain point. Stormforge Axe and Doomhammer in Aggro Shaman, and then Power Mace in Mech Shamans when they were around. And this is another great weapon to their roster. In my opinion, 5 mana is not too slow. You get Assassin's Blade, and yeah. it's really solid card. Fourth really solid card for Shamans. Shaman's Christmas party has begun. Early. Very, very early. That's it for today, guys. I would like to know from you, what are you most expecting and anticipating from the upcoming expansion? What are you looking for in the next 90 or so cards that are still going to come out? I personally want to see more anti-aggro tools because I like playing control, and I'm just afraid that I won't be able to play it because of the taunts disappearing, and I'm still looking for a couple of more anti-aggro tools. What about yourself? Please hit like if you enjoyed this video and subscribe for more Hearthstone content. And until I see you guys, bye! Take care!